exciting. This is also a really large audience for me, so thank you everyone who's here to see this talk. I am talking about inclusive onboarding. Before I dive in though, I want to show you all something.
Out of the dark, you are a light. You are the world. Go set it alight. If they say you're too big, show them how big you can be. You feel alone? Let's be alone together. Because when you stand, we stand with you. You are not just enough. You are much, much more.
She's my sunshine. In the morning, shining through my window.
Free to be yourself, always. Find your style at Zalando. Zalando, free to be.
So, why did I show this video to you? This is our new campaign and our new brand promise, free to be. If we work very hard to create an inclusive experience for our customers, we must also create an inclusive workplace for our employees. We can't have an authentic message externally if we don't also have the same message and dedication internally. So, I'm here today. My name's Sara Cordivano. I am Zalando's Diversity and Inclusion Officer. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and Medium. I write a lot about inclusion and diversity and accessibility and all kinds of interesting topics like that. And I want to talk to you today about inclusive onboarding. But before, let me introduce you to Zalando. I'm sure you might have heard of us before. We're headquartered in Berlin. We have 14,000 employees. We're about 50-50 split on internationals and Germans. The top countries for our internationals are from India, Russia, and Turkey. And so far this year, we've onboarded over 3,700 new employees, and that averages to about 340 per month. It is a huge undertaking, but it's also a great responsibility because we are tasked with introducing these new joiners to Zalando, and making sure they feel like the workplace is inclusive is a really important part of it. So before I dive into inclusive onboarding, I want to talk about what is diversity and inclusion. Oftentimes, these two concepts get merged together, and it can be difficult to understand how they work together and separately. So diversity is the seen and unseen characteristics and experiences, visible and invisible, which define who we are and how we experience the world around us. Diversity is not just gender, it is not just ethnicity or race or nationality, it is much more complex than that. And when we think about diversity strategy, we cannot just focus on one dimension of diversity. People from all different backgrounds and experiences bring a lot of perspective when building products. And it's really important that you have a diverse team because you make better products that way. Inclusion, on the other hand, is different. It's about creating an environment of respect, connection, and community where all people feel respected and valued, and it allows everyone to be their authentic selves at work. And the important reason I want to share this is because you can invest a lot in diversity hiring initiatives, on bringing people on your team, but if you don't actually value those perspectives, you don't actually make sure their voices are heard, you have wasted a lot of time and effort. So personally, I feel like creating an inclusive work environment is almost more important than hiring a diverse workforce. It's at least where you want to start. So that leads me to answer the question, what is inclusive onboarding? So inclusive onboarding welcomes everyone. It puts inclusion at the forefront, and you invite each person, all your new joiners, to feel seen during their onboarding experience, and ultimately, they're able to contribute more fully. And the message I want to share with you is inclusion is not a checklist of identities or experiences to include. It's much more than that. It is a continuous exercise in empathy. It's about understanding the different experiences people have and how they experience your communication and onboarding resources to make sure that they see themselves in that communication. So I want to give you an inspiration by telling you what a journey of inclusive onboarding can look like. And this is not all examples from Zalando only. There are other examples from the industry, from inspiring projects that I've come across. And the thing to know is that you don't have to replicate all these ideas or initiatives, but I hope you feel inspired to look at onboarding with an inclusion lens in your organization. The importance of inclusive onboarding, if you only build your onboarding to be inclusive of who you currently employ, you will never employ anyone else. You need to be ambitious and think, who could your job market be in the future? And that is how you actually get to a more inclusive workplace. So I've divided this journey into three kind of parts. The first is before day one, and this is all about transparency and support. So I'll start with before someone even decides to apply for your organization. Being transparent about your ambitions and goals and initiatives around diversity inclusion is very important because it lets external people who are considering applying for your organization understand where your values lie. And more so than ever before, applicants have a choice where they work. They no longer make the decision about where they will work based on the salary and the location. They look much deeper within a company. They are looking at the values, they're looking at treatment, respect, recognition. So if you're looking for employees that share your values, you need to be visible on what those values are. This could be being transparent about what your goals are related to hiring, about what you're doing regarding training, about what kind of services you offer for parents or people who are working part-time. But being transparent about this is very important. Next is inclusive hiring. Once someone makes the decision, they're considering applying to your organization, inclusive hiring comes into play. So essentially, this has many different steps. The first would be looking at your job descriptions. Are they written in a non-biased way? Are they attractive to people from different backgrounds, different experiences? Did you look at the gendered language within them? This is the first way a candidate gets to know your company, so it's really important that those job descriptions are unbiased, very clear, and attractive. Next, the hiring panels. If you have a team interviewing candidates, make sure that they experience unconscious bias training, that they have a clear set of processes to follow to avoid interjecting their own bias into the decision-making process. And make sure you have an offer committee that makes fair offers to your candidates, so you avoid having gender pay gaps or other pay gaps. So now you've made an offer to someone and they've accepted. Next, relocation support. So as I mentioned, we have about 50% of our employees are international, not German. And you might all be familiar with German bureaucracy, maybe. It is what it's rumored to be. It is very complex and difficult. So by offering relocation support really helps people coming abroad make that process much more easy for them. And I'll give you an example. So in Germany, if you want to receive that first paycheck, there's many things you need to do before you even are able to receive it. You need to register with the local housing office. And before you do that, you must rent an apartment. Before you do that, you must get your credit score. And before you do that, you must get a bank account. And to get a bank account, often you need to be registered. So it's a very frustrating cyclical process, and ultimately when you're finally registered, you're able to get your tax ID and you're finally able to get paid. But this entire process can take 2 to 6 months. So making that as simple as possible is an important way for people who are coming from abroad to really get settled quickly and actually feel welcome. Additionally, people who are relocating, it's great to offer them some temporary housing, especially for families. So, you don't have to deal with staying in a hotel for the first few weeks. So at Zalando, we have townhouses where our new joiners can stay before they get settled in the country. And then a guide to the new city. So, this again is about empathy. Put yourself in the shoes of a person who's relocated to a new country. They might not speak the language. They're not familiar with the layout of the city. Give them tools to understand and experience the city. That might be making them aware of what cultural institutions or religious institutions exist. It might help parents find a kindergarten or school space. And it might be as simple as helping them find the grocery store or doctor that suits their needs. All of this makes that process of relocation just a little less painful, so that when that person finally starts at your organization, they feel mentally refreshed, ready, and excited to join. And lastly, a welcome from the team. I was talking with a colleague yesterday about their first day at Zalando, and they told me that before their first day, about a week before, they got an email from their new team welcoming them, telling them how excited they were to join, and providing some just additional psychological safety that makes that first day less stressful. This costs nothing, but it's an organizational process that, if you put it in place, makes your new hires feel more welcome. Okay, now day one and the first week. This is all about a sincere welcome from your organization to your new joiners and an introduction to your community. I know not everyone is like Zalando. We have about 10 offices spread around Berlin. Each has a different building code. Each building has different sections of the building. Each meeting room has a different thematic name. So this can all be very confusing and intimidating at the beginning. But even if you don't have 10 buildings, it can still be overwhelming to try to find that meeting room or that kitchen or wherever the new team is located that the new joiner is about to join. Providing site maps can be a very important step to make this less stressful for your new joiners. And it helps specifically people with disability, for example, people who have vision impairment or people who use wheelchairs, to understand how to navigate the building. It can be as simple as letting them know where the accessible toilets are, where the prayer rooms, where the child family rooms are, where the meditation or quiet spaces are. All of this helps your employees get settled quicker. What you don't want to hear is a year in, an employee tells you, "I didn't even know we had a family child room." When you have this first week, you have an opportunity to share all of this information with your new joiners, and it is so valuable to them. They absorb it like a sponge, and then they will also be amplifiers through your organization. They will share it with other people as well. Next, employee resource groups. So, employee resource groups are grassroots community organizations within your company. You might have a women's network, an LGBTQ network, disability network, a Black employees network. We have all of these at Zalando, and essentially they have two main purposes. One, to create a sense of community for those groups within the company, and to create a clear line of communication between the communities and the decision makers. Because who are the experts of your community? Your communities. So it's important to use that knowledge, use their experiences to give better services to them. For example, you want to design a new disability inclusion strategy for your company. Ask your employees and your advocates that work on these topics, that experience this life, ask them about their experiences, ask them what service they need. Take it to heart. So making these employee resource groups visible within your community on welcome day or on the first week is really important, because if you're sitting in the audience, you already know what groups you can join. And in addition to this, make it visible how employees can start a new employee resource group. This is how they start, by essentially making onboarding as easy as possible and giving the employee resource groups tools. It could be budget, it could be access to leadership, executive sponsorship, to be as impactful as they can be. Next, names and pronouns. So this one is a bit difficult. So I'm guessing many of you are relatively familiar with the experience of non-binary or transgender. Essentially, oftentimes, people are assigned gender at birth, but they realize later in life that they actually do not identify with that gender, and they identify as trans, and often transition from, for example, male gender to a woman, or even a gender to non-binary, a binary gender to a non-binary gender. What often happens in this case is someone has a legal document with a different name than they actually use. So if you can put a process in place that allows anyone within your organization, but especially your trans and non-binary employees, to use a name that they identify with personally, that is their name, even if it is different from their name on their legal document. This has a huge impact. This is not easy to do. Oftentimes you have to do a lot of back-end work in your systems to make it possible. You have to write processes and create awareness to make sure that this is respected. But the experience of being called by the gender and name that you no longer use because you've transitioned is called dead naming. I would encourage you all to look it up. It is a traumatic experience, and it's not as simple as just being called the wrong name. It's actually kind of an attack on your identity. So putting a process in place to let people identify with the name that they use is really important. Similarly, pronouns. You might already know, not every person that you expect to be a woman uses a female pronoun. So you can put a process in place to allow everyone to visibly share their pronouns. You can even, at the beginning of a meeting, ask everyone to share their pronouns around the room. This normalizes the process that you should not assume the gender of someone based on how they look. Next, a buddy system. I've heard this mentioned a few times already. Essentially, a buddy system is not about partnering with someone to learn the technical skills of the job. It's about having a buddy who's responsible for your happiness and success in the office. And it could be as simple as someone who can give you, some tips about, where to find a specific product, or where to set up a doctor's appointment. But essentially having someone that can give you that friendly advice, that resource of information, puts another level of psychological safety and comfort to the new joiner. And lastly, during this first week, showcasing diversity. So, you have a welcome day, you have 5 presenters giving pitches, explaining the culture of the company. Make sure you have a diverse group of people sharing information about your company. It's actually very important because the people in the audience are looking on the stage, and they want to make sure that they see themselves in those people speaking about the company. And this is a great way to show that this is a priority for your organization. And if you don't yet have a diverse group of people that can make those onboarding presentations, that can share information about your organization, work towards it. Onboard new people, help them understand, learn how to give these talks, give them this opportunity, and then you actually benefit from giving this experience to everyone in the room. So next, the first 3 months. So this is all about acknowledgement and continuous improvement. So in my mind, inclusive onboarding is not just about the first week or the first month. It's really about an inclusive company culture. And how do you get there? Well, first you have to ask for feedback. You won't know how your new joiners experienced their onboarding unless you ask them. And you need to take that to heart, use it to improve your processes. This can be really frustrating, actually, because everyone is short on time. But if you actually step back and actually see your processes holistically, you can actually identify a lot of opportunities for improvement. And an ambassador program. So at Zalando, we have a pretty cool program. We do a weekly lunch series where each week a person presents their culture from their home nationality. And at Zalando, we have employees from 130 different nationalities. So you can imagine We have all kinds of interesting perspectives and experiences, and it's such a great wealth of knowledge that everyone else in the company can learn from. So, by having an ambassador program, by empowering your employees to share information about their home culture, it creates a more inclusive intercultural experience, but it also reduces bias because you learn more about the cultural traditions and norms from each person in your company. For example, today is Thanksgiving in America. Maybe some Americans in the room missing Thanksgiving today. So at Zalando, we had a Thanksgiving lunch this week, not just for Americans, but for anyone who wanted to learn more about the American Thanksgiving experience. Similarly, a few weeks ago, we also had a Diwali, which is the Indian Festival of Lights celebration, and it was not just for our Indian colleagues, it was for anyone who wanted to learn about Diwali. These programs specifically are employee-driven, but those employees have been empowered to take an idea and see it through the end. And I mentioned inclusive onboarding goes hand in hand with inclusive company culture. But in order to have an inclusive company culture, you need to give training and resources and tools to your employees. Everyone will not be automatically able to be the perfect inclusive ally or know the exact right words to say or, be an ally to other employees within the company. You have to give them tools to do that. One way is to actually offer trainings. At Zalando, we have unconscious bias training, intercultural awareness, mindfulness. These trainings help people realize that diversity and inclusion is important, but it also gives them the tools to understand and be fluent in the topic. But it's not just training, it can also be resources. For example, we have a library of about 75 books on diversity and inclusion topics that anyone can borrow at any time. This isn't a huge investment, each book is about 10 to 15 euros, but it gives everyone the ability, the option to borrow a book to learn on their own time. We also recently created an inclusive communication guide. So this helps people work through their language, think about how to include audiences and in their messaging. And this was really successful because it was a simple tool that we published for everyone within the company. We also worked with our employee resource groups to make sure it was accurate and really reflected the norms. And it was just like a small tool to help people feel more confident on the topic of inclusion. And lastly, on this topic, your leadership. So leaders in your company are role models. They are role models by default. Even if they don't want to be, they are role models. So you have to give them tools to actually be that role model. This could be inclusive leadership training. It could be, resources and guides for them to help speak effectively on the topic of diversity and inclusion. Because everyone is looking up to them. And if they really miss the mark, then unfortunately, that trickles down throughout your entire organization. And next, having a transparent and accessible discrimination reporting process. For any employee to report issues with discrimination or bias, if someone's experiencing that within your organization, the last thing they want to do is hunt around for a very complex and hard to find process in order to report the discrimination. Make this as easy as possible. Take their reports seriously and actually act upon them. This is how you make an inclusive and psychologically safe organization. And lastly, I'll mention partner and family inclusion. This is actually something I was inspired by Booking.com. They have a program for the spouses and partners of new joiners to their organization. And they really do an excellent job to create a community for those partners. Because relocating to a new country, to a new organization is not just about that employee, it's about their entire family. And if the family is not happy and they don't feel a part of the community in the city, then they're not going to stay. So actually investing in that experience and help building those connections and relationships is really important. And this goes the same for family as well, making sure that your families have access to childcare, to kindergarten resources, and making sure they feel like that your organization is a place for families. Looking critically at your work-life balance policy, or work from home policy, or part-time working policy, and make sure it's accessible and welcoming is one important part of this. Because if you really want to employ a diverse workforce, but you don't make a place for families or people who want to work part-time or have a different schedule, you'll automatically exclude them from your employees. So I want to leave you with a few final thoughts. Just to reiterate, that journey I told you, it's not really a checklist, but I hope you find it inspiring to figure out what kind of inclusion projects you would like to develop for your organization. In order to do that, I have 3 kind of general recommendations. The first is learn. So challenge yourself to widen your own views and empathize with the experiences of your employees. So for example, I'll give you a short story here. We have a new joiner joining us soon who's deaf. And this is the first time we really had to think critically about how our onboarding process supports people who have audio impairments. And it's not just about putting subtitles on the slide. It's so much more than that. It's about empowering the new team that person will be joining to make sure that they have the tools and awareness and understanding to be inclusive of that new colleague. And it's also about thinking about all the onboarding processes, everything from the interviewing stage all the way to the lunch with the team, and making sure that that employee feels included in the conversations, in the team activities, and in the general onboarding at the company. Next, recognize progress. So I always think about diversity and inclusion as a journey without a finish line. It is not possible to tick the box on diversity and inclusion at your organization and be done and call it a day and close the book. It is an ongoing process that takes time and incremental progress. But unfortunately, it can feel frustrating when you're in that kind of slow incremental stage because it's hard to see that you've actually had success along the way. So recognize progress. One example I'll share is recently we had a new joiner who went to onboarding day, and one of my colleagues gave a welcome introduction. And one thing we've been working on is making sure that when we talk about gender, we recognize non-binary gender. So in the welcoming address that my colleague gave, he specifically included non-binary gender in the conversation. And an employee reached out to me and said, I felt especially included. Just that mention of that made me aware that Zalando recognizes and appreciates gender beyond the binary. And lastly, start a conversation. So ask for your feedback about your onboarding. It's so important. Listen to what your employees say and actually use it to learn and improve your processes. They have this experience. Make sure that they are able to contribute back and actually use that as evidence to improve your processes. So this is my final note to you. I hope you feel inspired to think about your onboarding process with an eye to inclusion. And I also want to thank all my colleagues at Zalando and other organizations that inspired me with all these ideas on how to create an inclusive onboarding process. So thank you very much.